up, guys? It's Drew from the Money-ish Show, and we got another incredible guest here to help you in your business as you build and start your business today. Look, as an entrepreneur, we always want to try to scale that business. We always want to try to grow that business to get to the next level, and then hopefully try to exit or sell that business. So I brought on a guest today. He goes by the unique name called G. His name is Gaden Leavitt, but he goes by G, and he owns a company called Toolbox. He's a CEO and founder of Toolbox. We'll put the links in the show notes here below. But his whole purpose is to try to help entrepreneurs, just like you, business owners, just like you, take your business, scale it to a 100x level, and then try to exit out of that if there's an exit strategy there for you in your business model. We're going to spend some time with him, breaking down how do you 100x a freaking business, what does he use inside of it. He's at a super cool technology play inside of equity, that kind of innovator, cracking the code in that world as well, inside of this company called Toolbox. So on that note right there, let's figure out how you can 100x your business with G. G, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a fun 2.5 days. It's been a fast 2.5 days. It's been a very fast 2.5 days. You came in, this is unique because I've never done it before. You came in on Monday.
Yep. And
for the show. And in the middle of our meeting, sitting there talking, I was like, dude, screw the show. Let's go do business. And which I've never done before. And we literally jumped in the car on Monday and started driving to places, introducing to people that I knew here. And then Tuesday we did it again. And then now we're shooting the show on Wednesday. So it's been a 3-day show. It's been a 3-day show, man. It's the first time I ever did it, but there was just a lot of cool stuff you got going on that you do. So let's talk about Toolbox first, right? Well, actually, before that, back up just a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background, kind of where you came from, because you didn't start just with Toolbox. It was prior to that. There's some other stuff.
Correct.
So talk to us a little bit prior to Toolbox. What were you doing?
yeah, I originally, after Y2K didn't break the computers at the school,
I
got
remember
super
that.
fascinated, right?
Yeah, that
about
was
the
like
internet.
freaky.
And I got super curious about websites in '01 and actually started advertising vitamins on the internet way before it was cool to do so.
Yeah.
I was one of the first Google AdWords users.
Okay.
Right. That ended up landing me a job at Ford inside of a dealership ecosystem.
Okay.
You know, one guy owned a bunch of dealerships type of thing. And what I was doing was I was pioneering the internet department concept. How are we going to use the internet to sell cars? This was in 2003, 2004 era.
That's early.
And so once we did that, and I built the first website, the first strategy online to sell cars, et cetera, and we were actually started selling cars, I left, became an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And that was January '07.
So at that point, you were what?
25.
25 years old, okay.
Yep, 25. So at that point, I started what you would now consider a digital marketing agency.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, that wasn't a phrase. '07 was pretty early for that.
Yeah.
We really didn't even have social as a channel. But I started a digital marketing agency. I got it to over $1 million in revenue quickly, but only on 11% net.
Okay.
In frustration of that 11% net, I invented a software just to automate my own business.
I gotcha.
And we ended up taking that to over 50%.
Went from 11% to 50%.
Yeah, through technology only,
Yeah.
right? And so that transformed the business, put a bunch of net profit in my pocket, which I was able to use to build Toolbox.
So back up just a little bit further, I want to ask you, I'm an entrepreneur. I've started businesses, but I have no idea how to write code, software, et cetera. So here, you're an entrepreneur that's writing code, creating software. Where did that piece of the puzzle come from?
Well, the digital marketing agency, I had software developers on my team. And so what I ultimately did was I just pulled the best developers from my team and put them in a different office next door with no sign on the door and basically created like a covert operation.
Gotcha.
Right? And I just had those guys write the initial code.
So are you a code writer?
No.
Okay, that's cool. That's what I was just even thinking. You're not a code writer, you're an entrepreneur.
I'm an entrepreneur, a businessman, a marketer, if you want to say it that way.
And you're just using technology as kind of your device, not that you're a code writer. Like I think of Mark Zuckerberg. He was writing code for Facebook when he was at Stanford. Yep. You weren't actually writing the code, you just knew the value of it and then got the right people in the team to help write the code. That you could then go use as your entrepreneur spirit, marketer, et cetera, into it.
Yeah.
On that little topic right there, as a side note, just in business, if you can, talk to us a little bit, those that have business right now, the importance of getting the right people on your team.
Oh,
because if you're not a code writer,
I couldn't have started.
Yeah.
Even in doing the marketing agency, the first thing I did was I went and hired 2 people. I didn't even have a business plan. I said, hey, will you join my team?
Yeah, that's all entrepreneur
I hired
visionary.
a coder and a designer.
Yeah.
And said, hey, I want to start an agency. So that's
brilliant.
actually how I did it. Because I wasn't a coder or a designer.
Yeah.
I was a businessman seeing an opportunity.
So a lot of it, what I hear right now is you were a visionary. Because a lot of people when they come to our office and they see stuff, right, at our different events or whatever, or I'm big on design. Like my office has all kinds of like custom designer stuff all throughout it. People think that I must be some sort of designer and I'm designing all this stuff, and I don't do any of it. Like I don't even know how to like log into a Photoshop. I don't even know I can't even tell you the first thing about it, but I do kind of see the vision of what I'm looking for, and then I go find the people that can go create what it is. That's the vision that I have in my head, if you will. So what I hear from a lot from you is like you were really visionary side of it, knowing what the problem was and then finding a way to go solve that thing before you even had a business model or business plan in place. On that note, did you ever create a business plan like your typical SBA 73-page business plan? Like I've never done those.
No.
Yeah.
I think they're anniquated at this point, to be honest.
By the time you get done building it, it's changed so much. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
already outdated by that point, dude.
Yeah.
75-page business plan. By the time you're done writing it, you're just like, dude, it's been a year and a half. Like, market has moved.
And just to tie those together, what I was abnormally good at, and maybe you could argue that I'm still good at, is just seeing the market, seeing where the market was going.
Yeah.
Right. So I saw selling vitamins on the internet in 2001.
That's crazy,
right?
man.
I saw the digital agency movement in 2006.
Well, even think about the car thing, okay? Like internet and cars in 2002. We're in 2021 right now. And I would still argue that it still has not fully hit where cars online is like the hottest thing out there. Like, I'm literally in the process of buying another car, and like, my brain still says, go to the dealership, because I want to see it, touch it, feel it, whatever it is. And that's 2021. In 2001, to do internet car sales is like insane. That was like my point is it was way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Inside of it.
Yeah,
Understanding the market is what I'm getting to.
I think seeing the market is an innate skill, but it's definitely one you can develop. You just got to stay, educated, informed. You've got to think like a technologist.
Yeah.
You've got to kind of see the future, see around corners. And then, because that's a skill set of mine, it's not terribly surprising that I ended up in technology.
Yeah. Okay, so you do all this. Now get us to Toolbox, your current company you have right now.
Well, what I did was when I had 5x'd earnings,
okay,
right, my net profit.
Is this a digital?
This is the digital agency. I decided that what would make most sense is for me to use those net profits to build more software.
Okay.
So I sort of birthed this idea of like, wow, we could maybe build a software company given the results we just got. And so this is a little bit embarrassing to say, but I didn't know anything about becoming a tech CEO.
Yeah.
I didn't even have any friends that were in SaaS. The only thing I knew about SaaS was that Salesforce.com was a thing.
Yeah.
That's what I knew about SaaS. So we really leaned in and built a SaaS product when I didn't know much about it. And so what I came to the conclusion of is that I needed to learn how to become a tech CEO.
Okay.
So I actually moved to Lehigh, Salt Lake City, to learn how to become a tech CEO. I was mentored by a guy who had sold a tech company for $20 billion in the 90s.
Okay.
And I learned how to become a tech CEO over about a 8-9 year period. And in that 8-9 year period, I just kept building tools. Because I was going to masterminds listening to CEOs about what they struggled with. And every time I would hear something, I would go, I could probably create a software for that. And I just kept building software. And over the 8 or 9 year period, I was able to get to a toolbox status. What do I mean by that? It means I had built over 25 different software products.
Yeah. Off of being in these masterminds, hearing a problem and saying, I could solve that with software.
Correct.
That's kind of what would birth this software play, if you will, of the 25.
Correct.
Then you would go build, it wasn't like you were building random softwares, is what I'm saying. You actually saw a problem that a CEO of a technology or whatever problem was having, and you built the software of those 25 around that problem.
Yeah. So I ended up with 5 or 6 products in marketing, sales, HR, operations, finance.
Let me ask you this. Did you ever just go create like say you're in a mastermind, you hear this person talking about this problem they're having, and you're like, man, I could solve that with software. I'm going to go create it right now. You go create it, then go back to that person and say, hey, great news. I created a software for you that actually will solve that problem. Did you ever do a deal, let's say, like that? Or was it more of you went and pitched the idea to him, her, that you could solve the problem with software and then did a deal with them up front? Did you ever just go build one and then come back to someone?
You know, it sounds funny to say this out loud, but I wasn't even of that mindset. A few of the products I really wanted to launch and get some revenue from, and so I did that. One of the first products I launched, I made about $600,000 on in the first few months, which was kind of cool. But for the most part, we had enough EBITDA to continue building products. My goal was to build the products, not necessarily market them. I knew there would come a day later when it was time to market everything, but I had to get my toolbox built. And if I stopped the development, I just felt like that was not in my best interest at that time. So I just kept building. And so I probably got ideas from people, and they never even found out that I solved that problem.
I got you. So it wasn't like you were there trying to solve that, build that software for that person. You're just saying, okay, if this guy or girl has this problem, I bet you there's 5,000 other people in this industry that have that same problem.
Yeah, and if I end up with a toolbox 3 years from now that solves all these problems, I'm going to be one successful.
Dude, but there's a lot of insight there. I was on a show with somebody else, I can't remember who it was, but he was kind of talking about the same thing. He's like, dude, if you want to be good at a business, he's like, it's not overcomplicated. And his whole opinion was like, sometimes entrepreneurs fall in love with their own idea, thinking that their idea is this like groundbreaking thing, and they're just passionate about this idea, when in reality, the idea is not solving anything. They just love it because they feel like they birthed this, idea, if you will. Where what he was saying was basically do what you just did. We're like, you join these masterminds, you found the problem, and you allowed the problem to be the idea, if you will, and then said, okay, I can solve that. I can solve that problem. I can solve this problem. Because anytime you're solving problems, you will have customers.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're going to have customers.
Absolutely. So
it's like a genius angle where you just sat in these rooms and hurled the problems and said, I'll go solve these and build my toolbox, which then will solve it for whoever else has that same problem.
Yeah, and that moment occurred in April 2019. That's when I said, okay, we're going to form Toolbox.
Yeah, you'd already been doing software for years and years and years.
Complete, yeah, but
in 2019 you said, okay,
go all in.
We're here. Let's put them all in Toolbox now, and figuratively, and push these things out. There's another part you were talking about earlier that I thought, man, that was genius too. I love how you just use the problems to create the business versus you sitting around saying, what software should I build? What's the software? You actually went and found the problems and then let that be your idea, if you will.
And for a person who's oriented like this, who thinks like this, business ideas are like, I have 17 a day, right? Because I see a lot of problems, right? I just came from a meeting down here with a big law firm. I found 15 problems over there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you have this problem orientation where you look at the world that way, you see businesses everywhere you look.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of truth there for entrepreneurs that are starting, is find the problem and then just go solve that problem. You will find customers if you're solving problems, I promise. But there was one more thing you were talking about earlier that I thought, dude, that was very, very insightful what you were talking about. It was before the team thing. I was going to come to me like, dude, I want to talk about it. Anyways, I'll move on, and it'll pop in a second when my Adderall kicks in. It will come to me. So talk to me about, you have Toolbox launched at this point, which has all this software built inside of it. Now the angle is getting the software out. Is this where the marketing side kicks in? Of like, now you have this massive toolbox of softwares. Now the play is getting it out, which is where you moved into software or tech for equity.
Yeah, we actually started doing it by just selling software like most people would, charging a monthly fee for it. And we actually did really well at that. In the first 7 months, we had it to over $800,000 a month in monthly recurring revenue. So it's not that we did poorly, but what we found was that in that process, we got a lot of equity offers from other folks.
Okay.
And what we ultimately came to was the decision via a pro forma, some projections that were strong enough to tell us that if we were to do equity plays, we'd be able to build enterprise value 10 times faster.
Okay.
And we truly believe that. So we went all in on doing technology for equity.
And got out of the SaaS.
Yeah, we could still do SaaS any day of the week, right? If somebody called us, we just ultimately kind of choose to focus on equity.
Yeah. You made this equity play and restructured your company based off of, let's do software or technology for companies that we can take ownership, equity places in, and play kind of the, I'll even call it the long game, or a little bit of the betting, almost like a VC side.
Correct.
Right. You're really a VC, but instead of, and you use this terminology, so this is your phrase, not mine. I think you said you were trading. It was like technology. Instead of cash, it was technology. But I thought you said.
Yeah, instead of cash, we give them code.
Code. That's the word. Yeah. For as a VC standpoint, you're like, hey, I'm not going to give you cash, but I'm going to give you code, which will 100x this concept of your business that you're looking at doing right now.
Yep.
Before we get into the 100x model, because I want to break that down.
Yep.
I want to actually get the money is question, because I think it kind of all comes full circle of how the 100x works and why that's there for in your kind of proprietary model of Rev, which you kind of drew out for me earlier. So let's talk about the money is first.
Yeah.
And we'll tie this all back into it. So first, a sexy as hell photo here that my team pulled for you. And I'm gonna have to put maybe like G right there at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
But you fill this out right here, and then sign it right here, and then me and you will talk about it, and then spend the rest of the show talking about that answer and how it applies to your company. There you go. All right. This is, I freaking love this guy's autograph. His answer, G's answer is money is equity. Money is equity, and his name, Leavitt, signature G. So dope, dude. I love your autograph. I'm one of those weird guys that like, I actually look at people's signatures, and that's dope, man. All right, so minus your signature, let's talk about why money is equity. First, let's talk about that. What does that mean? And then we'll talk about how that applies to your company in 100x. So what does money is equity mean?
Well, I think metaphysically we know that money is some form of stored value or stored energy that's created, right? And so if you look at money or cash as stored value, another way to actually articulate the phrase stored value is actually equity.
Okay.
I mean, think about what equity actually means.
Yeah, you take a house, right?
It means stored value.
And the house goes up in value, and now you have this stored value, or what was literally referred to as equity in a home.
That you can redeem.
Which is stored value of a home that you are not using right now, but it is there.
Right.
It's equity. We call it equity, right?
So I think of it as equity, and I think we'd all be better off as entrepreneurs at thinking about equity more than we do. Yeah. What I find, for example, is that a lot of entrepreneurs will think about their business in terms of how much cash they can take from it, as opposed to thinking about how much equity they can build inside of it.
Okay.
And so I think that orientation is actually pretty powerful to think about. Most entrepreneurs don't actually know what the enterprise value of their business is today.
Okay.
You know, if I just found one on the street and said, hey, what do you do? And he says, you know, I do frog breeding. And I said, oh, we have a frog breeding business. That's cool. How much is it worth today? Most people can't answer that question.
Okay.
So you need to know how much equity you've built to today, right? But then you got to know how to 100x it, to your point, right? So that's the game I play in. I play in the equity game. It's all I think about. And I teach entrepreneurs about equity.
Yeah, so a totally different perspective than most entrepreneurs ever look at equity play, right? And your answer being money is equity or money is stored value. Your whole model is based off of stored value, creating equity in all these companies. I think you got 14 equity places right now, equity shares that you're holding in these 14 different companies that you have. I want to go back to a question first, though, that I love and I think would be great value for the viewers and listeners, which is you talk about that frog breeder could not, if you asked them, hey, what is the value of your company? They would have like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I got 200 frogs. how does an entrepreneur in maybe a beginner level understand and kind of mathematically put together what the equity of their company is? How would you tell an entrepreneur to do that right now? On a, again, not a $100 million company, but just a startup, not a startup, but a growing company that's out there.
I mean, the great news is that you only need to know 3 numbers. You need to know what your revenue is. You need to know what the earnings are, or the net profit, EBITDA, if you will, if you want to get scientific. And then you need to know the multiple that the company trades at, the valuation multiple. So how much is that business valued off of EBITDA or top line? So in practical terms, if you had 50 million in revenue and you had 10 million in EBITDA.
On that note, just for them, what does EBITDA stand for?
Earnings, net profit, we could say, right? They're almost synonymous. So if you had 50 million in revenue on 10 million in net profit, you have the basis for the valuation, but you need to know the multiple. Right?
Because all businesses are different on multiples.
It's so dramatic, it's crazy, right? So a software business might be worth 10 to 30 times revenue. A mom and pop plumbing shop might be worth 3 times net or EBITDA. So you've really got to know that multiple.
So some companies could be based off of the revenue, gross revenue, right? And some companies would be based off of their net earnings or EBITDA. And then they would also have different multiples inside there based on what type of company they are, et cetera, inside of it. And my guess is there's probably no like broken down spreadsheet that lays all that out for an entrepreneur to look at. It's kind of just knowing the market, knowing the industries that are out there.
Multiples do move. And there are good databases out there that help you understand what the trailing multiples are for specific industries, et cetera, over the last 12 months, those types of things. But a good way to look at it is if you had that $50 million business doing 10 million net, let's just say the business is worth $50 million. The imputed multiple off of EBITDA is 5 times, right? But the imputed multiple off of the top line is 1, right? So you have a 1 times multiple off of revenue or a 5 times multiple off of EBITDA. So it's just sort of knowing the triangle of those 3 numbers. And then, you know, how you get to 100x is a function of those 3 numbers.
Yeah, because you're going to start pushing on those 3 numbers right there, right? To try to explode that growth in the business. That's where all that growth is going to come from, is inside that formula right there. What you guys refer to as rev, Toolbox, right?
Yeah, revenue, earnings, and the valuation multiple.
Yeah, and you guys take that rev model to a company that has a massive technology issue and use the rev model, breaking it down for them, showing that, look, with technology, understand the rev model, add technology to it, here's why you should give us part of the equity because of what could happen inside of this rev model based off of technology. That's the overall concept from a super high level view. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's just, for the viewers, if you can, let's just kind of break one down so they can kind of understand what you guys do at Toolbox there, right? So I'll use me as the example for this. So let's say I come into your office and I have, give me a company that maybe, well, let's use my power room because you guys have one that you did software for, a type of a mastermind that your partner is in, the multiple club. Let's just kind of use that one since I'm it and you know the business.
Yep.
So I come into you and say, hey, I have this mastermind that I have, and I think I could grow this mastermind to, let's just use a fake number, throwing numbers out, a $10 million mastermind per year at a gross revenue, and I think that my net off of that is going to be around $4 million, right? Just throwing numbers out, right? Obviously, as an entrepreneur, I'm going to look at it and say, man, there's a lot of technology pieces that I need. Like right now, I need an app. Like literally, we should actually talk because I need an app. So inside of it, like I actually have this technology problem right now that I want to solve in my mastermind. I think it would bring a lot of value to my mastermind. I'm going to come to you, and inside of this, as an entrepreneur, the last thing I want to do is give up equity, right? That's kind of what we're taught, preached, beat to our heads is don't give up equity, go get a loan, go get whatever you need, but don't give up the equity. Walk us through why it's a good play from Toolbox's side.
Yeah, sure. Well, the first thing to establish is, so what is currently the enterprise value? So in your numbers, you had 10 million top line on 4 million in earnings. and then let's just say the multiple is 5 times earnings.
Okay.
Right, so which would be 2 times top line. So you have a $20 million business on your hands if those are the numbers, right?
In this example.
Yeah, in this example. So what we then do is we ask this one question: well, what would technology do to those 3 numbers if technology were unlimited, if it were strength, whatever that is, right? So then we start to project those 3 numbers forward onto this sort of future self that you're building, right? This is me today. This is the future self. And what most entrepreneurs can't see is kind of the math underneath these 3 numbers. So did you know that as long as you work on all 3 numbers, you get an exponential effect because you're moving all 3 of the numbers that affect the overall equation, right? It's sort of like 1 + 1 is 11 type of situation, right? So in practical terms, let's just show an example, right? So we have rev, right? Revenue, earnings, the multiple. If we 11 times revenue, and then we 3 times the earnings, and then we 3 times the multiple, how big did we grow the business? Well, most people kind of look at that and go, well, probably 11 times because that was the biggest number, right? But if you walk through the math, these are multiplied by each other. So it's 11 times 3 times 3.
Okay.
Right? 11 times 3 times 3 is a really big number.
Because 11 times 3 is 33.
It's over 100x.
Yeah.
Right? Because 11 times 3 is 33, and 33
3.
times 3 is 100x.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you 100x your business? Well, you could probably 10x the top line as long as you 3 or 4x the EBITDA or the net, and then as long as you 3x the multiple. So let's talk about how you actually move those 3 numbers with technology. Let's start at the bottom in the multiple.
Okay.
You move the multiple by making something proprietary.
Exactly.
You move the multiple by making something that cannot be pulled off the shelf somewhere else. And yes, that means moving off of all of the canned software that you could have otherwise be using. Because what you're essentially trying to prove to a buyer is that no one else in the competitive marketplace can duplicate what proprietary thing you have.
Let me pause you right there, because probably for a lot of entrepreneurs, they watch Shark Tank all the time, right? And how many times have you heard the shark say, hey, wait, let me stop you. Do you have anything proprietary before I go buy this thing? Because if not, I could just go start this. Literally have heard Kevin Leary say, why would I give you $1 million for 10%? I could go start this business for $1 million and own 100% right now, because there's nothing that you have that's proprietary to you. It's just a business that you're running right now. Right. What you're referring to is, I think, so key. We have this one of our companies right now, and when you have that proprietary piece in that multiplier, that valuation, dude, it is a game changer. To me, it may be one of the biggest game changers out of those 3 numbers right there, because if you can change that multiplier, it's like addition versus multiplication to a certain degree.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and there's no, quote, easier way to 4x the business than to change the multiple.
Yeah.
Because you didn't actually have to grow your staff or like try and figure out how to duplicate your office space and all these things that come with revenue growth, right? Where you have to literally scale. Changing the multiple is changing the perception of the buyer.
Okay.
And so one thing that's really important to note is that in the rev model, there are 3 completely different stakeholders that you're speaking to when you're trying to add technology. And in the third one, at the multiple, the stakeholder is the buyer of your company, the buyer of your equity, the capital market, the person who's acquiring your business in the future. And you're going to exit one way or another. So you might as well think about who that buyer is and what their perception would be.
This was like, for me in my office, like game-changing moment, like light bulbs went off in my head. When you just said it right then, I don't want to skip over it, because it was for me like, holy shit, you're right. And that is, sometimes as an entrepreneur, we don't really think about the exit. We're thinking about cash flow, right? We're thinking about, let me go get this, I'm going to grow this and increase my cash flow and so forth, right? Which you were talking about earlier, not so much the equity play. Because we never think about the equity play, we never think about selling it, we never think about exiting it. However, what you just said is like genius. And you said in my office, which was, everybody will exit their company. There's no way around it. If you have a business right now, you will exit that business. Sooner or later, you will exit it, period. End of story. I think you gave 5 examples of.
Well, the market will kick you out likely if you decide not to exit, because somebody's going to take your lunch money at some point.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
you can think about how to exit, right? I think you gave like 5 of them. You can obviously sell it, right, which is like home run. You could pass it down, like you build it to a certain point, but that's still an exit. You pass it down to the next generation to your family. You exited the company. You could die just straight up, like not passing it down, but you passed away in a tragic accident where you exited, right? You get tired of it, burned out, and just quit. I have done that one several freaking times.
Yeah.
And it sucks because now I look back and think, shit, why didn't I sell that? Like, why didn't I build it like with your model, thinking about, I should build this for the purpose of exiting it, and I didn't. I was always at the cash flow side of it. And then you just kind of get, as an entrepreneur, you get bored of it, burned out of it, and you quit, right? And that's the exit, though. I exited that company, right?
And put in simpler terms, like you ask an entrepreneur, like I ask you, do you want to work forever? And they go, no.
Oh, no way. That's why I'm an entrepreneur.
That's the exit.
Yeah.
Right? Just the fact that you don't want to work forever.
Yeah.
And so by nature of the fact
so
that you don't want to
true.
work forever, you've already sort of set the exit.
But without ever talking about
But without ever planning for it.
Yeah, we both know Eddie, and we talk a lot about, he is at the 5 phases of a business. And I think for me as an entrepreneur, I love that 4th phase, which is the expansion phase, which is like, when you're putting gasoline on the fire there.
Yeah.
The one that I have just never paid attention to is the one we're referring to now. He calls it the succession phase.
Succession, yeah.
And it's like, okay, but how are you leaving this thing? Like, you're building it, but how are you leaving it? Let me ask you this. So I think every entrepreneur should just catch what you just said there. Everybody's going to exit. You can either exit and make money off of it, or you can exit and walk away from it. But you're going to exit this business, dude.
Yeah.
Is every business exitable in a sale somehow? Or is there certain that are not?
I think it is if they do the rev model appropriately.
Okay.
Right? Which is to say they've created something proprietary.
That's huge, right?
There's a market amount of earnings or EBITDA that's a net benefit to the buyer, which is a function of how much revenue's there as well, right? So if you can really digest this rev model and use it to your advantage, you can turn a non-exitable business into an exitable business. Most businesses aren't sellable only because they haven't went through the rev model and really said, how do I make these things really attractive? Mm-hmm. Because, flipped on its head, who doesn't want to buy a profitable cash flowing business that operates on autopilot? Mm-hmm. There's so many buyers for that thing, it's incalculable, right? The problem is you haven't created something that is transferable to someone else, that's scalable, that's not a job.
I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. I'm being the viewer right now, like talking to you. What if, again, I'm gonna just use me as an example. Take some of me, and let's say I'm building a personal brand. I've never thought about this. Can you exit a personal brand?
I've never seen it.
You've got Gary Vee, right? It's a better example, right?
Yep.
Gary Vee. Can Gary Vee exit his personal brand?
I think if you asked Elvis's estate, they would say yes, because he exited and the estate still makes money, right?
It makes like a ton of money.
He made proprietary things that make money.
And the other thing, I look at the Gary Vee model, right? Let's just talk about that for a second. I don't know if Gary Vee could exit Gary Vee.
Yeah.
However, all the businesses that he has underneath Gary Vee, I know that he's exiting several of those. He's exited.
Sure.
He's sold off of them.
Sure.
So the personal brand built this ABC business.
Right.
And then he did R-E-V, and then sold off, exited the equity of that business right there.
Yeah.
He might have used his personal brand to help build it, but he still built it with the equity in mind. And then, so I guess it is possible.
Yeah. The same way Elvis had a personal brand, but he built a song that still is lasting, and that song is the proprietary thing. Yeah. Right, that he really built. So he's thinking equity, right?
Yeah.
And if he wasn't thinking equity, he did a hell of a job of building equity.
Yeah.
Right?
Sorry, one more curveball. I'm going to get back to this rev model. My ADD is kicking in.
I love it.
I think about this NFT stuff going on right now.
Yeah.
Right, which is like, it's mind-blowing I don't fully understand all of it right now. I'm trying to comprehend a ton of it. Is there equity plays? I don't know how much you know about the NFTs that are out there.
Yep.
Is there equity plays in those NFTs?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's really almost a lot. Well, I guess there is cash flow inside of them as well when people are using them, but there is massive equity plays and those NFTs that are happening right now.
Yeah, all these, blockchain itself is really a system to build equity, and if you think about it, because the crypto itself is an equity, right?
Right.
And so I definitely believe that NFTs will be a very viable equity going forward. I think they're being used for kind of some silly things now and again, where you and I kind of scratch our head a little bit.
I'm like, what?
But the concept around an NFT, you know, being able to make something proprietary, make only one version of it, and then to build the equity in that object is powerful.
All right, so let's go back on the track here. So I think it's so viable for entrepreneurs. So what they should really be looking at, which a lot of entrepreneurs don't, is, hey, what is your exit of this business? You are going to exit it one way or another. And can you actually exit this with a sell on it? To do that, you got to be thinking equity nonstop. To understand equity and selling it, you got to understand what you've created at Toolbox, which you guys refer to as the REV model, which you were talking about, revenue, E, earnings, V, valuation multiplier. We just kind of laid off, paused on, you were talking about the multiplier of every business can be different, and we need to try to increase this multiplier. One way to increase that multiplier is with what you guys do, by creating some sort of proprietary process, system, software inside of it.
Yeah, and that's the third piece, right? We're sort of working this backwards, reverse engineering it, right? So if you can think about your business in terms of what can I create that's proprietary that will build equity faster, you start there, right? Then you move up to the middle rung, which is the earnings or EBITDA section, right? And we ask that same question, what could technology do here, right? And the first thing to note is that in rung 2 at the E, the stakeholder is your staff. It's the internal people, right? It's how you run the company. If the keyword in the bottom is proprietary, the keyword in section 2 on the E is process. We're looking at how you run the company, which is ultimately how you get to more EBITDA.
Yeah, that's the efficiency side, right?
Yeah, the stakeholder is the staff, how you actually work the company, what they do in the company, how manual things are, how much automation you've implemented. It's worth noting that 90% of all technology conversations I have are around EBITDA.
Interesting.
We may not be using that word, but the stakeholders, the staff, the goal is to increase earnings or net profit, et cetera. But what people aren't thinking about is this proprietary thing underneath it, right? So, you know, I 5x'd EBITDA in my marketing business. I know a lot about increasing EBITDA. It's super important. But you have to create something proprietary as well. So those are 2 levels. The top level, which is revenue, the keyword is products. Because the stakeholder at the top is your client. It's your customer. What can you use technology for? To create products to sell to your customers. Right? A lot of people haven't considered how technology can be used on the delivery of services, on the digitization of services, right? Think about the ascension ladders you see of information products leading to masterminds, leading to consulting, right? All of this down here is proprietary, scalable, tech-oriented stuff, right? Up here, it's high-ticket services, right? So it's people saying, wow, I consult for, you know, $700 an hour, but I could create a tech product and sell that tech product for 100% net margin, right? So it's thinking in the 3 areas, right? Products, process, and proprietary. Your customer, your staff, your buyer. 3 totally different ways to look at tech. Whereas right now, before you heard this, you probably were looking at tech in a more one-dimensional way.
Yeah, well, and I'm gonna need some clarity here, because I think I was looking at a one-dimensional way. Let me make sure I repeat this back to you, because there's a lot of truth in there. You've got this, in my head, I see this like triangle. Bottom tier of the triangle, tier 1, let's call it, is your valuation multiplier, right? And that's going to be based off of proprietary items. Then your second tier is going to be your earnings, EBITDA, which is going to be based off of your processes, meaning your staff. And if I go down, is the buyer is the main person here. Middle one is going to be your staff, which is the main person. That's going to be your processes. How do you become more efficient, lower cost, increase revenue? And then the top rung, you have your revenue, which is going to be the products that you're selling. And the products person is the customer. So you have customer, staff, buyer, or you have proprietary, process, and products is what you have on this side.
Correct.
Now, the last statement you made is where I want some more clarity, right? Because I'm tracking everything. I think I look at technology one-dimensional. You nailed it. I look at it as like, hey, there's this, here's my company, and then here's this piece of technology.
Yep.
I think what you're saying is, no, technology is through all of it.
Yep.
In this triangle here, where in my brain I immediately went to, proprietary, I get it. Like we should have like a software side that's this proprietary side that we have that's gonna help our multiplier. But how do you put technology through all of it? How does that work?
Yeah, well, it's first worth noting that you could create something proprietary that doesn't actually drive earnings, right?
Yeah.
You could create something proprietary that actually doesn't really drive revenue.
Right.
You want to create something proprietary that also drives earnings and revenue, right? Sometimes you can get a 3-for-1.
Yeah.
And that's where I would tell the audience that it doesn't have to be really complicated, right? You could stumble onto a thing that you're already thinking about. You just haven't thought about how powerful it is. You might already have the idea. It's inside of you.
Right.
You just haven't realized it's a huge revenue generator. It would totally increase EBITDA or net profit, and it would add something proprietary that a buyer would love. And if you do all three of those, you get an exponential benefit, not an additional benefit of doing it in all three camps, right? Because if you increase revenue 3 times tomorrow by doing it, but you also increase EBITDA 2 times, you've already 6x the company. And then if you increase the multiple 3 times, you've 18x the value of the company. Again, equity, right?
Right.
You
Equity.
18x the equity you have in the business
Yeah.
by doing maybe just one thing, right? But you need to make sure it hits these areas, or you need to have a product you're trying to create that drives revenue, you know, some other product that's trying to drive EBITDA, and some other product that's trying to drive something proprietary into the business. You need to work on all three. And what I do with entrepreneurs is I interview them. And I spend a lot of time figuring out what they're good at. And when I interview entrepreneurs around rev, you know what they say to me?
What?
The only thing I'm good at is the revenue piece.
The product
I'm not a person who intrinsically knows how to change EBITDA. And I'm not a proprietary guy. That's not my background. I just know how to do mortgages really well.
Okay.
So I'm a revenue guy, right? I can drive revenue because I interview them and show them the rev model and say, which one of these 3 numbers do you think you can move the most? And they all say revenue. If you only move one of the numbers, it doesn't matter how much you move it, you're missing out on the
100%.
exponential effect.
Yeah.
So you could do the same amount with much less effort by moving all 3 numbers.
Yeah, I mean, and like you're 100% accurate. Like I'm sitting here thinking of these, and you didn't ask me, but if I ask myself the question, which you asked, which one of these, Drew, in your business, do you think I could increase? Well, it's not EBITDA, because when you think about EBITDA, I think of efficiencies, I think of staff, I think of processes. That is not my strong suit. Like, that's not my game. So if you told me to go in and increase EBITDA and increase all the processes in our company to make it more efficient, run better, lower the cost, increase the income, I'm like, I would just retire.
You're asleep at this
I'll
point.
retire. Like, I'm good, bro.
Yep.
I'm out. My exit is I'm out. If you ask me the proprietary side, I just think immediately I start thinking about technology and coders and building something that's very, very unique to only my company that we own, that's ours. And I think, dude, I don't even know where to start with that. Like, minus now I'll call you at Toolbox, but like past that, before I don't know. Like, I got a web guy. But if you ask me, if you told me which one I could revenue, products, no problem. I got it, bro. Yeah. I got you. I got you on this one.
Yeah.
And that's when I could increase. But like I'm looking at it through your viewpoint, and I totally understand. I can increase this all day long. In my personal opinion, this is my personal opinion in this conversation, I would love to have the strength to increase this one actually. Because to me, this one is the game changer one out of all of them. This is, because again, this is multiplication, this is addition. This is how I just kind of view it, right?
Yep.
This one is the multiplier. I feel like most entrepreneurs, like you said, are up here. It's a new product, it's a new service, it's a new thing that we're creating up here. We suck at these 2 down here, right?
Yeah.
Can you take technology, and I love what you said, because like in this triangle model, like my God, if you could create something proprietary, but it hits all 3 levels, it's like 3-for-1. Like you are immediately like multiplying this one thing, and it affects all these pieces through here.
Yep.
So just for maybe example.
Yeah, let's make it tactical, right?
Yeah.
So can you create a technology product today
Okay.
that helps you deliver something more valuable to your customer, right? A digital experience, a tech product, a digital learning experience? Can you teach something? Can you do something?
Right.
Create a SaaS product, create a hardware product. I don't know your world, right? But if I could spend 5 minutes with you and go, oh, there's a product opportunity, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal, is to start to think through, are there products that we should be delivering on that are tech oriented? Now, if we can do that, that's great. The next question we ask is, could we fulfill using technology, right? And sometimes if you do a good enough job of creating a product that's tech-based, the fulfillment's baked in, meaning there's not much fulfillment, like an info product, right? So you can do a really good job of those two things, sometimes a 2-for-1 right there. And then if you do a great job on those two things, there's a chance you've built something proprietary enough to actually drive the multiple up, right? But all you're really doing is saying, can we sell something that's tech? Can we fulfill using tech? And can we be seen as tech by the buyer?
Right.
Right.
The buyer wants to see us as tech.
They want you to see you as tech enabled, using technology efficient, right? They don't want to see you as a dinosaur.
Yeah. Bro, this is like mind blowing stuff right here. Like, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm like, shit, I did it all wrong. I got to start over. Because like my mind is like so intrigued by what you're talking about and I actually want to like stop the interview and go sit in my office real quick and like, because this is a 3-day interview and now the interview is coming to the back end side of it and I'm like, I'm gonna need you to stay one more day, bro.
I've been here almost all week.
Just get a house out here, bro. Just get a house. Because like now my brain is like I got so many freaking ideas right now of like what I do, and starting from this side, at this level, proprietary side, and like I just want to. I know who my customers are. I knew what my base is. Like instead of starting a company based off of products. Screw that. Let's go start a company based off of proprietary and then hyper focus on that it affects all three of these. Like you just said, can we build it off of it? Can we fulfill off of it? And then can we sell off of it? Because if that's the case, sky's the freaking limit,
You're
bro.
seen as tech, you fulfill using tech, and you sell something that's tech.
That's
the trifecta.
All right.
And if you do those three things well, you've intrinsically changed the value of the company so much that you've likely 100x'd it if you can execute on that for a few years. You probably will achieve something much beyond what you thought was capable.
Yeah, so I'm done on the interview. We just need to go to my office. I got like 5,000 ideas I need to run by you right now. And I'm good on equity, actually. Makes complete sense now to me. Like, hell yeah, I'll give you equity. Like,
well, let's tie those two things together, right? Let's just pretend you had a business and you were thinking tech for equity, right?
Okay.
And I had all this stuff to make it proprietary.
Right.
And let's just pretend that in the back of your mind you're thinking, I'm thinking G's going to want half of it. I think we should just go in 50-50. You know, how much would we have to X what you currently have if I took half for you to break even?
Yeah, this is a brilliant point. Because you did it yesterday in a meeting I took you to. I'm like, holy shit, you're right. All right, so let's do it again because this is a brilliant way to look at it.
Okay, so let's say you have a $10 million business today.
$10 million revenue.
Yep.
Okay.
$10 million in revenue. And let's just say there's 20% EBITDA and it's valued at 5 times EBITDA, so it's worth $10 million as well.
So $10 million of EBITDA, or $2 million of EBITDA, valued at 5, it's a $10 million business.
It's 10 million top line, worth 10 million.
Okay.
Right? So let's say that's today. Tomorrow morning, that business is 50% owned by me and 50% owned by you.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But then next month, it's twice as big.
Well, okay, pause right there. So it goes from 100% owned by me.
Yep.
And it's worth 10 million.
Yep.
Okay. Me and you partner on a tech play for equity.
Yep.
It's now 50-50 partners, let's just call it.
Yep.
Therefore, now I'm not worth 10 million, I'm worth 5 million.
Correct.
Because I gave you half, 5 million of it.
Correct.
Okay. So on Monday, my business is now I'm worth 5 million.
Yep.
Okay.
And let's just say on Tuesday or next month or
next
whatever,
month, or the following month,
2x the business.
Okay, we doubled the business.
Which we would have doubled it by virtue of the rev model, something in there. Revenue went up, EBITDA went up, the valuation multiple went up.
Yeah.
In theory, just by partnering with me, your valuation multiple went up 2 to 5 times just by bringing me on.
Okay.
That's a real, that just gets you going, right?
Yeah.
Because if you added the proprietary nature to the business by bringing me on, then you already got your money back.
Right.
Because you doubled the valuation by bringing me on. So now you're at a break even, and now you have this new partner that you virtually got for free because you tripled the value of the business by bringing me on. And you're already at your break even. So now everything that we build in perpetuity is just additional upside for you, right? Because we're creating so much more than you would have created without me, because we moved the proprietary needle, we moved the process needle, we moved the product needle, right?
Yeah, and one point I want to make that I think I threw you off when I interrupted you because what you just said I didn't hear yesterday, but then what you said yesterday, I don't think you said it here, or maybe you said it a little bit differently, because yesterday you didn't talk about, hey, and there's truth to this, just by you, let's just say I lost half, gave up half, just by me bringing you on as a partner, there's going to be immediate value created because of that alone, right? Which is what you were talking about right there.
Correct.
Let's take that off the table for a second.
Yeah.
Yesterday what you were saying was, okay, so you're a half. The only way that you'd ever accept that deal is that I would have to believe, based off this rev model, based off of your partnership, that we would be able to take this from here to, let's just use the number 10x down this road, okay?
Yep.
So that means I'm gonna go from, I was at 10 million, I'm down at 5, but I fully believe we're gonna 10x, let's just say the 5. Okay, it's gonna take me to 50 million.
Correct.
So I went from 10 million to 25 million, right? However, let's play devil's advocate, worst case scenario. Do I believe?
Hold on though, the math was wrong. Because the business was 10 million.
Yeah, I did off the.
I had half, you had half.
Right.
Right. And we 10x the business up to 100 million in value.
Right.
Of which you had half.
Right.
So you went from a $5 million position to a $50 million position.
Of a $100 million business.
Correct.
Yeah, I was doing my half. But for clarity, technically, if we 10x'd it, it would have been 10 million to 100 million. My half was at 50, right?
Yep.
So I was doing 5 million my half to 50 million my half. Okay. But if I play worst case scenario here for a second, the other question is, what would it take for me to get my position back?
Right.
I was at 10 million
Yep.
when we started. I go down to 5 million of equity. What does it take for me to get my position back? It's actually just like one thing. We just got to go from 10 million, not to 100 million, just to 20 million. That's it. That's all we have.
We got to double the cadence at which we build enterprise value. We have to double what you were doing before.
Yeah.
So anything above double is accretive for you, meaning it's more than what you would have.
And that's just, again, like I said, I took off the piece of the puzzle that you and your company have zero value to the bottom line. Let's just set that off to the side. If you bring that back on the table for a second, we're already getting closer back to it just from starting off, right? So to me, like, I totally see the angle and the play. And, from an entrepreneur standpoint, I feel like you have dropped some serious knowledge, like truth bombs on this thing right here, dude, of like, how should an entrepreneur actually look at their business? They are all going to exit, period. Just how do you want to exit? For free? For nothing? Or how about you build this thing the right way, and at least while you're building it with cash flow, you build the equity as well.
Do you know what the #1 deathbed regret or question or frustration is of an entrepreneur who's about to sell? It's that the multiple's lower than they want it to be.
The multiple is lower?
The multiple's lower. Ask any entrepreneur that's went to exit.
Yeah.
It's when the buyer came back with the price, they looked at it and went, oh, that's a little lower than I wanted, right? And it's because they valued it off the multiple lower than the seller wanted. So the other thing to think about is that if you fast forward your life, you're going to roll forward some point and someone's going to offer you less than you want for your business because the multiple's not where it should be. And you can prevent that from ever happening by working on the proprietary nature of what you have.
Yeah. Dude, my mind is just running 100 miles an hour right now. Gosh, dude, I got like 1,000 questions for you, but I think, no offense, I want to do them privately because I got like so much stuff on our value. It's just like, dude, you brought so much knowledge from a perspective that I think entrepreneurs just never freaking look at. And I'm talking about myself, right? Like, and so many of the points you hit were dead on accurate. Like, as an entrepreneur, I look at technology as like one piece, not from no. It should be you should be trying to run this thing all the way through. And it should be a multiplier of 3 out of the gate when you do the technology piece. And you're so right. Like, most entrepreneurs are revenue top line based up here. which is the product space, right? And I can come up with a new product every other day if you want me to, like no problem. And I can sell it for you. But this is also, if you think about it, like a small piece of that, the smallest piece of the triangle. The biggest piece of the triangle is down here, the proprietary side. Most entrepreneurs, myself included, live up in the small piece of the triangle. I'm aborting mission, and I'm going here, bro, because I can totally, and to be fair to the viewers, like I have cash flow right now, right? So it's not like I'm, maybe I'm in a little bit different spot than a lot of entrepreneurs maybe that are starting off right now, but even if they're starting off, they should look at it from this side and say, hey, what is there that we could do proprietary to make this thing 3x immediately off of one move?
One last note is that what we just talked about actually helps the culture of the organization too.
I can see that.
Which is an underlying foundational element of what you're trying to build, is how strong is that culture, right?
Yeah.
When you do things right, the right way, when they're systematized, when there's a right way to do it, when processes are automated that are otherwise mundane and frustrating, the staff likes the business more because there's a little bit more air in the room, right? There's less going on. There's a little bit more breathability, right? Processes are automated that I used to have to do manually. There's less bodies to take care of. There's less confusion and frustration. There's less communication that has to go on. This is a cultural game changer if you get this stuff right. And then all of a sudden people like working there more. They think the business is cooler. They think it's more hip. They think it's cutting edge, and people want to work at companies that are cutting edge, right? Then you add like a cause to it, game over, because you get the right culture and the right cause behind it, and this generation we're in will want to join your company. Now you've got an attractive competitive advantage in the marketplace.
That's a whole nother freaking podcast we go shoot,
right?
Because culture and cause in today's generation, like I've been breaking this down, studying it with it, is moving to the number one driving force more than even what someone makes salary-wise is cause and culture. Like it's what's driving this generation. Different things drive different generations, right? Because they're not the same people, right? And cause and culture drive this generation that we're in right now. That's a whole nother freaking show that we could shoot right there, bro.
And those things are hard to do. I don't mean to make them sound easy, but you're rolling a rock up a hill by just trying to do it with brute force. If you become techified, you're rolling the rock down the hill.
Yeah.
It's just easier.
I absolutely love it, man. All right, G, we're going to go to my office. We're going to extend your flight another day. I'm actually going to Built Bar, so you might as well just meet these guys too while you're here, bro. I've got more people to introduce you to. I'll make it a win for you. And, dude, I absolutely love having you on the show. Got to get you back out. I also got to get to Newport Beach. I was thinking out with one of your buddies, like, I think we could have some fun out there. And Newport's, like, got to be one of the coolest places in the world.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is absolutely a cool place, man. So love having the show. You guys watching the Money Show. This is G. You guys go to his website. Check him out, toolboxos.com. We'll put in the show notes as well. Follow him at toolboxos on his Instagram handle as well. And then think about what he's talking about, dude. This is like, I promise you, it's like life-changing viewpoint from an entrepreneur side. G, absolutely one of my best favorite interviews that I've done in a long time, man. Not where I thought I was going to go, and then it was just like,
my pleasure.
Truth bombs, dude. That was some high level stuff. So you guys watch the Money Show. We'll see you next week. You guys follow G